Welcome to the Elevate Your Event podcast, where we talk about how to plan and execute an unforgettable event that will dazzle your guests and generate more income for your organization. From fundraising and securing trendy auction items to event production and logistics, get the best tips and advice from seasoned fundraising and event professionals who have been in your shoes.
Hey, well, welcome back to Elevate Your Event, where we talk about ways that we can make fundraising events better. And I think today...
And more fun.
Way more fun, or maybe less stressful. Yes. So we've got Elise, so we got Lori back here with us. I'm Jeff Porter, and this is...
Lori. And Elise.
Awesome. We're thrilled to have you with us today. We are going to talk about how these events should end. In other episodes, we've definitely talked about how these events should start or kind of things that happen on the build up to the actual event. But now let's talk about how we get the guests out the door with a smile on their face, which is called checkout for most people.
Okay. Checkout.
And it's so funny. Like, we'll walk into a lot of events and everybody, like, you know, you haven't even started with like guest registration or anything. And then the event manager comes up to you and she's like, "Can we talk about checkout?" I'm like, "Really? It's 4:00. That's going to happen in 5 hours. How about we talk about check-in?" But no, it's good to talk about checkout. Actually, It's probably good to talk about checkout and how you want to do it way before you even get to that point.
Have a plan.
Have a plan.
Strategy.
And there's some best practices, right? And we were talking about that, you know, and one of the ones that came up recently, you know, because we get this question a lot on the service team is, well, how should I number my items? Yes. Right. And it's so funny thing is like if you go to a lot of auctions, they number the items, you know, like, oh, we're going to make the, you know, European travels, the 100s, and food and wine is the 200s. And, you know, you can certainly do that. I suppose you could organize your items by category, but that's what categories are for. You know, you can organize your items by category. So you don't really need the item codes or numbers to do that, but they can become a handy checkout method. So one of the things that I've learned, and, you know, my wife and her sister were way more involved in auctions well before I was ever involved in auctions. But one of the things they did, which I thought was a really unique and kind of a cool idea, was that they would use the item codes not to determine the category of an item, but to determine where that item would be at checkout. Mm. And so I was like, because one day I was sitting there, I was talking to them. I'm like, okay, so I don't understand. Like, what are these 100s? And they're like, they're certificates.
Oh, yeah.
And then I said, okay, so finally, this is what they did. And I actually think this is a pretty cool idea. So they would make all the 100 certificates, 101, 102, 103. And those would go into a bin, numerical order. The 200s for them were all physical items. So when I saw item 214, I knew it was something I had to go get and bring back to the table. And then what they would do with the 300s is usually... that's some sort of combo, right? So it's a certificate with a physical item. And so a lot of times what they would also do is so there was a certificate that would say on there, like, hey, this also, there's a physical item with this, right? Like, don't forget it. Like, hey, there's a coffee basket or something like that, along with the Starbucks gift cards or whatever. And then from there, it would kind of vary. So a lot of times 400s might be things that maybe those are the consignment items, even though they still have a certificate. They wanted to keep them separate. Or in some cases, they would number the items that could not be shipped. And so these had to be picked up or they had to be delivered or something. And a lot of times that would be like a gas grill, you know, or, I mean, there was a snowblower in one auction we were in. And so they numbered that kind of stuff in the 400s. But
A golf cart.
You should drive home.
Drive home in your golf cart.
So anyway, so that was something that I always thought, hey, that's a plan ahead type of thing, because you can always change your item codes, and most of the time your software won't care. And if you haven't printed out your display sheets that you're going to put out on the tables anyway, you could probably make some last minute adjustments. But before we kind of dive into the whole checkout process and the training, is there anything else that you've
Where you're doing your checkout?
Where? Okay.
Where are you going to do it? I love it when you can have a room that is separate for silent auction items, and then you can set tables in front of the doorway of that room, and you don't have to move the items.
You mean not on the other side of the band that's playing for the after party?
Yeah, no.
No.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, where you're screaming at the guests for their last name.
You mean runners aren't supposed to run to the event or to the items?
We worked an event. Jeff and I worked an event together where the items were on 3 different floors. And we did checkout, and we had to run
Lori,
upstairs.
I got that out of my memory through several sessions of therapy, and you've just brought it back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, you had to run up the stairs, and then, some of the volunteers were...
They were inebriated and not helpful.
Not helpful, to the point where we were like, it's okay. We'll just go do it ourselves.
Yes.
You stay there.
And, that is talking about Apple Watches and making sure that we hit all and close all of our rings. I definitely closed it twice that night.
Oh, easily.
Yes.
It was a good workout.
Yeah, well, Apple shamed me the next day when they're like, hey, at this stage of the day, you were way further along than you are today. I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to do that again. I climbed about 500,000 steps that night to collect items. The best part is we had no idea what floor they were on.
Oh, that was completely confusing as well. That was not, I think they did their silent auction by code. And then we didn't know which items were which, and so you had to run all over the place. It was fun. It was a funny event.
So in that regard, if you're going to have items distributed everywhere, item codes, but maybe also you can think about a kind of a subcode. I wouldn't call it a subcode, but like a different way of saying this is on floor 2, and then this one's on floor 3, and this one's on floor 4. It's just the building we were in was really neat, but it definitely did not have. I mean, their silent auction was throughout the entire thing, so it would have been nice to say this is B-200 versus C-201 or whatever.
That would have been a great
very
idea.
Complicated.
Well, look, I know there's some auction software that they just start numbering at 100 and go up, but there's other auction software that will allow you to be a little bit more creative with how you can do that. And I've seen some really cool other ways to do that. So if you don't like the 100s, 200s, 300s, I've seen C101 for certificate. I've seen other types of codes that you can put inside of that item code that tell you specifically where it's at.
Art. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Art. Gift
Or
card.
words. You could do CERT, C-E-R-T,
Yep.
100, 101.
Yeah. So let's just make sure that
Yes.
we all agree on something. Your bidders don't care what the item codes are.
Truth.
Okay. Now, don't make them super long, because if they are searching by item code, they may not, like that. But B101's fine, right? Or C200, that'll work.
Or to that point, when you're asking a runner to go get an item and you say, go get me item number 101, please, rather than go get me item number 439261XJ. Remember that one.
Yeah.
After a night
Some
of
kind
drinking
of
wine.
organization is key.
Yes.
And you definitely have free reign to set up however you want, but you do want to organize somehow, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our pre, right? Like, so we've got the items organized. We've got them numbered in a way that's going to help us at checkout, because we're super awesome plan ahead types of people. Okay. We're on top of our game, because that's what makes checkout a lot smoother. Okay. So then let's talk about kind of the nest. You kind of alluded to it too, right? I mean, where you're going to do it.
Yep.
And so when you're having a physical event, where have you seen the best place to do it? And I get it's venue kind of specific, but where have you seen it's absolutely not the best place to do it, besides next to the after party band, which I experienced 11 months ago?
I like the room. In fact, our high school did their auction Friday night, and we have a silent auction room, and we filter everyone through the room when they enter. That's how we do check-in. And then when they exit, we actually block off the room, put the tables right in front. We have our runners run around the room, and no one else has access to those items. Nobody can take the incorrect item, because that's a big one. And everything is in a compact area. So
yeah, those are the best checkouts for sure.
Yeah.
When you don't have to redesign everything, and the guests can walk to where they've already been accustomed to going. Like, you don't have to tell them to go to a different location. At your venue, you're going to the same location that you went to look at the items. Makes it really, really nice. You set a table up front, then everybody's familiar too with where the items are. That is the best. The worst checkouts, I'm trying to think. I think some of the worst ones is when you're trying to check people out and the items are not anywhere near you. Like,
Yes.
and so
Takes
you have
so
no
much
control. Yeah. Or you don't even have runners. It's go check out over here. And then people are just grabbing items. I had a big event that I worked where they didn't move the items. It was in a big open hallway and they wanted you to check out at this like back area first. People weren't doing that. They were just going right to their item and like leaving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, think about how traffic is going to flow, right? And I've been to an event. There's a hotel here in Colorado it's an awesome hotel, but their auction every year, because the ballroom is so small, they put the auction out in the hallway around the ballroom, and it's in like a horseshoe around this ballroom, and they put checkout out in the lobby. And so they want you to walk out to the lobby, to your point, check out, and then come back in with these like vouchers to get your items, right? Well, people figured out pretty quickly, like, this is a huge waste of my time. I already know what I won, because if you're using mobile bidding software, it's going to tell you what you won. Whereas if you're using paper bid sheets, you have no idea what you won. So this would not work for you. But which means you're going to be standing in line. So anyway, they would just say, this is what I won. I'm going to grab my 3 things. I'm going to walk out the door and pay for it. And you know what? I mean, people are honest.
Yeah.
We've been doing this a long time. I have not seen items stolen. I've seen people take the wrong thing
Yes.
accidentally.
I have seen that often.
Right.
Very often.
But people aren't there to really steal items.
And the other thing, if they do that, they're more likely to not like pick up their certificate and not know how to redeem things.
Right.
They're probably missing key parts of the packages.
So let's talk about an alternative then, because this has come up before. Are you an item mover or not an item mover?
I don't love to move them. I think it's a lot of extra work, but I do think there's a time and a place for it.
I am not an item mover unless you're giving out like gift bags or something along with those items. Then you can kind of reorganize things, but you need time to do that.
Yeah.
So that only works if maybe you have a nice big program, or one of the events I work, they have a fashion show. So they'll close their silent auction, they'll shut down their auction room, and then they will actually tear down the auction room and get it all set up for checkout with all their gift bags and all the cool things. And it's actually a really cool process because the guest walks in and it's like right away, I'm 100, and they have all their items in one spot together that person won.
Yeah.
So they have time to do that.
That'd be nice. And I've been to some of those where I've seen like rows of tables behind the check-in area, and they put all the 200s and then the 250s, and that's cool. You know, the runners love that for sure. But you know, to your point, you have to have enough time. And we get this question a lot: when should I close my silent auction? You know, well, I would say if you were talking to a benefit auctioneer 4 or 5 years ago, they would have been adamant you close it before the live auction starts, because they're used to paper bidding and they don't want people leaving the room to go bid on bid sheets. But I think most benefit auctioneers now are pretty comfortable with mobile bidding and people being on their phones and staying in the room. And so we're big proponents of, you need to keep your silent auction open as long as possible. A, it drives more revenue. But B, let's be honest, when the silent auction closes, some people want to leave. And you may not want them to leave. And we tell people that a lot. Hey, if you're going to run your program after your silent auction closes, you're going to have a distracted audience. You're going to have some people who are like, great, I won my item. Yeah, let's go. Right?
Yes, for sure.
And so you got to be a little bit careful about that. But if you do have time to move items and you feel like, you trust your volunteers enough to move some of this stuff, I mean, I've seen stuff break. So you got to be careful.
Yes.
Then I think it certainly can help with the where's all of our stuff.
Mm-hmm. And the closing the silent auction early really only works if you have a reason for people to stay.
Yes.
So that's worked out really well when you go through your whole program, you do your big ask, you do your emotional video or your presentation, then you close the auction, then out comes
Thomas Rhett.
That
I've seen that, and that works.
And people stay, and it gives you time to organize the checkout.
Yeah.
To give them a great experience. And then they can dribble through checkout as well. Like if they have a concert, or again, I have an event I'm going to this weekend that is a fashion show. So people are there for the fashion show, and so they'll close the silent auction, then do the fashion show, and people can come check out if they want, but hardly anybody does, and it's just this nice dribble. as opposed to a
We just did that at our vet. And, we had a national act come in from Nashville. And so right when they're going on stage, we're closing the silent auction, getting things going, because we know people aren't going to leave right away. I mean, they're there for that purpose. Well, they're there to support the charity, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, shamelessly, we also know they're there for the concert. And so it helps. You have a little bit of time to organize things and kind of get things into gear. One of the things that I've seen, and to me this is over the top, so I could never pull this off. So I'm going to share with you what some people do, because some people are just superwoman and supermen type of people. I'm not. They will literally print out a manifest, which, a lot of the software will do for you. They'll print out a manifest or a set of invoices for everybody, and they've got their gift bags, and they are literally assembling everything you need for checkout, and it's ready for you when you walk out the door. And it's impressive.
I love that.
Yeah.
And along with that, I've seen people who are worried that people will come back, their guests will come back and say, oh, I didn't get this, or, oh, you didn't give me everything. They have their guests basically sign the receipt, the printed out receipt, and say, yeah, I got everything. So if they come back, and then they're, of course, they make sure that the guests did receive everything. But
that's being super organized.
Yes,
I don't want anybody who's watching this podcast to feel bad if you're not doing that. I don't do it at my event. So
I don't do it either.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. It is a pretty cool idea if you have the time to do it, but it does allow you to kind of organize things a little bit better.
But it also involves a printer, time,
yep.
Some sober volunteers, which sounds awful, but some events, they're hard to come by.
They are. They are. So let's talk about volunteers for a second, because they are pretty key to a good checkout in a couple of areas. Obviously, they're runners, and so that's really not a job where you have to do a lot of training. You just kind of have to tell them how the items are organized and where to find them, and then you can give them. I mean, I think your favorite.
I like sticky notes.
Post-it
notes.
Yes.
Yep. I have a whole container of them in my bag.
Note cards, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Like if you're the type of person that just wants to hand somebody something, I've seen electronic dispatch systems that are pretty cool.
Wow.
With some software, it's all on an iPad. So you can tell someone, hey, look up bidder 213, check their invoice, and go get their stuff. And so that works too if you have enough iPads to give to runners, or give them the sticky note. And if you've really got your organization down, you'd only have to write 212, 215, whatever. That's it. And then have somebody at one of your volunteers who just sits in front of the certificate box and pulls them out and hands them. And
it's always good to have one person run gift cards.
Yes.
Or certificates, because otherwise you have too many hands getting into a bin, and people are waiting, to try to, get in there. If you have one person doing it, you just grab it. Super easy.
Yeah.
Super
and have
easy.
enough runners. I think of some successful checkouts.
Sober runners.
Yes.
Moderately sober.
I do an event with about 1,000 guests, and they have some really, really cool items. They have golf carts and, snowboards, paddle boards, lots of big items as well. But they have very strong volunteers who can get the items, and they just are super organized. And that checkout is so fast.
Well, that's good.
Awesome. Speaking of which, one of the things we like to say in some of our coaching calls is one volunteer for every 10 items you have really helps push through checkout in a real organized way. It also ensures that the auction managers understand that you do need a team of people at checkout. And let's not forget about leaving a really good experience for your guest, a really good impression on the way out the door just as much as on the way in the door. And we talked about that with our check-in podcast.
Well, that's what pushed us to build Handbid in the first place. Was the checkout the year before was such a disaster. And what really caused most of it was the fact that there was a lot of human error in the recording of the winning. So we were on paper bid sheets, obviously, because we hadn't built Handbid yet. And so one of the things that happened was that we had a system built where you would type in an item code and a paddle number. And like everybody else, our item code started with 100 and went up, and our paddle number started with 100 and went up. And some of the volunteers would swap those. And so instead of
I can imagine
bidder 150 winning item 300, bidder 300 won item 150. right? And so there was some of that going on. There was some like not calculating bid sheets correctly, or maybe there was a back page to the bid sheet with more bids on it because we ran out of space and they just looked at the bottom. And so anyway, there's a lot of those things that created a bit of chaos at checkout where you're trying to fumble around. And it wasn't even a runner issue. Like runners are standing around going, I don't know, what did Lori win? We're like, we don't know yet. Hang on, right? We got to recalculate everything by pulling bid sheets. And Lori, what did you bid on? Can you help me with that? Oof. So obviously software takes care of a lot of those things. Human error is at the top of the list of things that it can fix. But it points out that the other side of this checkout experience is making sure that the invoices are right and people have paid them.
Right.
All right. So you got your runners, and ideally they're sober and they're also capable of finding items and kind of doing that thing. And we'll talk about some of the forbidden items in a second. But on the front end of that, you have to make sure that somebody is helping make sure that the invoices are correct by talking to the winning bidder and also making sure the payments are processed.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah. And so what happens when the auction closes? Well, in the traditional paper days, it was even worse. But what tends to happen when the auction closes?
They get an alert that they've won.
They've won, and then they line up.
Yeah, they begin
Right?
lining up.
Now, that's gotten better over the years. But in the beginning, when people were used to paper bid sheets, they all lined up because they had no idea what they won. So they wanted to see, and they knew that lines were going to be long, and they didn't want to wait in them. So they dragged their stuff back to their table for the after party or whatever. Today, they're like, oh, I won these items. I'll get them on checkout on my way out. So that whole, mass assembly doesn't always happen. But when that line happens, right, one of the things I love to do, I mean, I'm certain with a lot of organizations, they're going to have a string of laptops out, and they're going to have their credit card readers, and they're going to be looking up your invoice, and do you want to pay by cash or check or whatever. I love hitting the line and just looking on people's phones, right? Because it's like, hey, what'd you win there, right? And you show them how to pull up their invoice, and they look at it, and the invoice says that it's not paid. And would you like to go ahead and pay that with the card you had on file? Yes. We'll hit the pay button.
The pay now.
So you can literally go down the row, and you can get people to check themselves out, process their own
it
payments.
saves so much time.
And if your mobile bidding software allows for the bidder to cover your credit card fees by prompting them if they want to, they can take care of all that on their own, right? Then when they show up at the checkout counter, they're paid in full, ready to get their stuff.
It takes about 30 seconds to get your stuff.
Yeah,
you have good runners.
I don't any longer, if somebody's paying with a credit card and I'm using the software I like to use, we definitely always train the volunteers to check the app, check the mobile device first if it's paying with a credit card, and then we set up a separate station for any kind of solutions. So anything that's above and beyond, split tender, splitting the item,
checks and cash.
Put those people off to the side. Not that they're secondhand citizens, but because it just takes a little bit more attention. So I love it. And the other thing I love to do is send out messages to those people that have an invoice explaining that you only need to come to checkout if you have an item to pick out.
Right. Otherwise, we're going to run your card.
Yeah.
And you can go enjoy the after party.
Yep.
Thank you for your donation.
Yeah, there's no reason for everybody to stand around and wait for you to charge their credit card when they can just do it themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So very easy.
No, I love it. And so, look, I mentioned earlier this concept of forbidden items. This doesn't come up often, but depending on who is doing your running, you might have certain items you don't want them to handle, okay? And so sometimes that can be just a really expensive item that you want to make sure is properly either reboxed because it needs to be carefully packaged, or something where you just feel like someone who works for the organization should probably handle it and not a volunteer. It could be a firearm. I've seen that. And certainly you don't want to send some 15-year-old up to grab a firearm and bring it back. So those things definitely you need to note where those are or how you want to have those handled. I've seen $10,000 piece of jewelry.
Yes.
Right? And that comes with a security guard who follows it everywhere. I've seen that. So those types of things, you just have to make sure that you have a plan for that and how you're actually going to do it. In some cases, you don't even deliver it that night. Right, so depending on the state you live in, especially if you've sold a firearm at an auction, that might have to go back to a gun dealer, and somebody might have to go to a licensed firearm dealer to pick that up.
Or alcohol.
You don't
Yes.
want a
You don't want
teenager
a you don't have
carrying
a
that
12-year-old
around.
picking up alcohol at checkout.
Right.
Probably
You're
not
just
the
handing
best.
it to them. Bye. Good luck to you. You know?
Yeah, especially if they know exactly what it is. You're like, how do you know that that was the right bottle of liquor? That's kind of scary if you're 12. But no, and then the other thing is start to look at how much stuff people have, and what is the plan if somebody has a lot of things.
Getting
How are
that
you
out
gonna,
to the car.
Yeah.
Or what about if people Uber or, take...
Well, so I did an event in New York once, and there was a lot of wine sold at this event, and everybody in New York takes public transportation. No one, I'm sure maybe somebody drove, but I'm telling you, they probably spent more on their parking space than the hotel room, right? So I would say that in most cases, they're Ubering there, taking a taxi, or even the subway perhaps. But in those cases, what is your plan for them? And so what this organization did, which I thought was brilliant, was they had a delivery service.
Oh, wow.
And so what would happen is you came to checkout, you paid, and then they would say, well, do you want to take your items home tonight, or would you like them delivered to your place of work? Here's the boroughs we're delivering to. And they had them listed out. Oh, well, I live outside of the city, but you can deliver it to my work, and then I can take care of it from there, and I want to take care of it tonight because maybe they commute to work a different way. And so they charge a fee for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this had a courier service pick up all the items that night.
That's amazing.
With a manifest of where they went. And yeah, I thought it was a cool idea.
That's
I
really
love
cool.
that idea.
I haven't heard of that one.
Well, the other thing is, I would say for some of those folks that have too much, like, in terms of how do you get it to their car, you do need to have a plan for that. And you need to have some people that are able to carry things, right? I was telling you earlier, I did carry a case of wine up a flight of stairs for a pregnant lady who kept telling me the entire time, don't judge me, just put it in the car. But, I mean, she was not going to carry it.
Right.
And so I've been to other events where it's not even that the things are heavy. It's just that, some guy won like 9 things. That was at the same event where we were climbing 1,500 flights of steps.
Boy.
I think we took 3 trips down to the sidewalk while he went and got his SUV to kind of load all of his gear. So you've got to have it can be dollies, it can be carts, whatever it might be that are going to help you be able to kind of move this stuff around. But
And what about those people that aren't at the event? If you're using mobile bidding software, you're going to have people hopefully all over the country bidding on your items, and they might not be there. So those people that are not there, if you've got some software that tells you, hey, are you on site? Are you here? Otherwise you can put those items to the side and you're not going,
right.
Where is Bob Smith? Why
Right.
is Bob Smith still, what is he doing?
Pull up
he's
all
not
your
even there.
invoices,
He's not even
filter by who's on site,
there. Right.
and say, these are the people I got to worry about tonight. Everybody
Right.
else is kind of taken off.
And then the ability to add shipping on, same as that courier service.
Yeah.
Like, you can do that in a software, or you can just have a plan for it.
Yeah, for sure.
I know after COVID, there was quite an influx of people not even having items on site. Like, I worked quite a few events where they didn't even have items on site. They might
yeah.
have a couple of things and some display sheets and QR codes, all of that stuff, but no items. And then it was a lot of the schools did it. And why not? Because you can have a checkout at school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
could
you
just come to
could.
school.
I don't know.
I
I don't love that idea. Maybe during COVID it would make sense, but
Yeah.
we did an event years and years ago, and they decided, hey, you know what? It's going to be way easier if we don't bring any items on site. Well, okay, so there were 2 issues I had with that. So the first one was there's just display sheets everywhere. And, like, come on, auctions is a little bit about being, like, building a retail store, right? So you kind of have to sell this stuff, which means you have to take the gas grill out of the box and put it together, unfortunately. But, people walk around. They're shoppers, right? They want to see the stuff. They want to touch it, feel it. Well, that's really cool. And so when it's just a display sheet saying this is a, Traeger, Ironwood 850 grill, that's kind of cool, but I'd like to lift the hood and touch it, right? All that kind of stuff. So that was one thing, right? And then now you got to deliver all this stuff.
Right.
And so so Monday, this guy emails into service team and he's like, so how do I get all these items to all the people that won them? And of course,
I don't know. How do you?
What's running through my head? How about you bring them to your event next time?
I agree. I like to see the items. If you have put together baskets, They're fun. I mean, there's always little odds and ends in there, and you're going to miss out if you just have the display sheets. And
or like clothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Or because you need to see.
Mannequin. Put it on a mannequin. Yeah. Hey, it works. And you know what's interesting is, sometimes like I've somewhere in like, I don't know, our archive of like ebooks and marketing stuff, there is a picture that literally shows 100 display sheets in plexiglass frames, all just stacked in rows like tombstones in a cemetery. I was like, okay, that's the ugliest auction
That
area.
doesn't sound fun.
No, and it's like, I mean, checkout was just weird because the only thing they had to give out were certificates. Everything else they had to ship to you.
Like at that point, why bother building up an auction like on site? Like commit to the fact that it's only going to be online.
Yeah.
And go that route and don't do the display sheets and all that stuff at that point.
it did work during COVID. It worked for sure. But part of the in-person event is the fun. It's fun to see the items, get excited, and get in bidding wars.
Well, and I get it. Sometimes you're thinking, well, how am I going to get this stuff reboxed up? But it's really not that bad. And I was at an event in Atlanta, and they're rabid football people down there. And so they had 2 tailgating packages. They had a Georgia Tech one, and then they had the Georgia Bulldogs one. And they put all the chairs in like boxes and whatnot. And so I got there. I'm like, we're popping this tent. We're putting the chairs out. We're putting the pom-poms out. And we built like 2 like rival like things. Like, wow, how are we going to box all this up? I said, we're just going to box it up.
Literally the reverse of how we unboxed it.
So I get it. I mean, it's a little bit tough to think about, like, yes, you've got to kind of reassemble or kind of package this stuff up, but just have a plan for that. Have some extra boxes. Like we said earlier, the gift bags are awesome. And they're cheap. I mean, for our event, I was sitting there talking to my wife one day, and I was like, I've been to enough Handbid events now. I think we should do this gift bag thing. And we literally went down to a local place here, and they were cheap. Like $1 a piece.
The guests love it.
Yeah.
It's
They love
nice. It
We
makes
put our
it
sticker
easy.
on the outside. So we bought red ones because that's our brand. We put a sticker on the outside, and it was like, hey, here you go. It's like walking out of Nordstrom's.
Yeah. Well, and also, if you're going to re-gift any of your things that you've won, they're already
Who
ready to go.
re-gifts, Elise? Come on.
Hey, some
I
people
do.
all their
I do a lot
shopping
of-
at the auction.
I do a lot of shopping at
Yeah.
auctions.
Yeah.
A lot.
Put a little tissue paper in, and you've got a gift.
But all in all, with checkout, the most important thing is consider your guest experience. How can it be the best for your guest? Just finish the event as good as you started the event.
I agree. And so that's having the plan. So let's just kind of quickly summarize. So we talked about how you number your items and how that can be a huge benefit for you at checkout. Making sure that you have capable and sober volunteers, making sure that you have a plan for how you're going to help people pay and kind of organize where you put your checkout area.
Where your items are.
Yeah, and again, I do love your idea of keeping it in a similar place. So if I walked in this door to get to the event, maybe I should, when I walk out, see the same thing. So that's a great spot to do it. And then if there's any other challenges, I think about how you're going to tackle those challenges up front, and that can be logistics of how people might get their items home or whatnot. But no, it's been fun talking to you guys about this. I think there's been a lot of really good advice that's come out of this, and I think in the future, I mean, I'm sure we'll have more advice that we're going to be able to offer as we do more of these events and come up with more stories.
And it's fun. It's fun to think of the really good events, and then maybe
The ones that they're just a little more
need
challenging.
A little help.
Yes, exactly.
4 stories of items.
Yes.
Hey, you got your exercise.
Hey, you stand on the shoulders of giants, which means that you have to learn from other people, and especially on the good side, but also on the bad side about how things work. So hopefully you found this episode helpful.